So
let's get all of this going. All right. Let me know if you can see the opening slide. Google AdWords, part 1, fundamentals. Yes. All right. Brilliant. Thumbs up. If you're not if you don't have loads of background noise, feel free to sort of stop me in the middle of this presentation and ask questions. So my plan is to probably do at least 3 sessions on Google AdWords. And I say that because it's a great tool, but there's an awful lot to learn about it. Now, as Jordan said, like I ran a digital agency for 18 years. And it took me a long time to wrap my head around Google AdWords. So this will be sort of a distillation of some of those things. Now, I've broken it out in parts. So at the end of this session, well, if you're super bright and super motivated, you could probably go off and run some AdWords campaigns. But this first session is not really about, you know, the switches that you need to, you know, toggle to operate a campaign. It's more about the fundamentals of how Google works. But I think it's really important for you to understand how it works and why it does what it does, because it will help you to start thinking about how to build a good campaign. All right, that's enough preamble. So let's kick off with things that you might know about Google AdWords, right? And feel free to put thumbs up, nod, whatever, when I show you various statements. So the first one is, if a customer types a keyword into Google that you've bought, then your ad will show, right? Okay, and then where does it show on the page? Well, the highest bidder, so it's an auction, so the highest bidder for that keyword will be ranked number 1. And then you'll get a bill. So Google charges per click. So the number of clicks times your maximum bid, that's the bill you get. All pretty straightforward. So far, so good. Mild nodding. All right, for all of you that nodded, no, that's not exactly how Google works. That's what everyone thinks happens, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And you could easily sort of miss a few tricks. So Google doesn't technically do any of those things that I've just said. And that's why I call this session like fundamentals of AdWords, because I have to disavow you of some things you might think about Google and then sort of build back up your knowledge. So the thing you have to remember is that Google really is not like other advertising platforms. And this is what makes Google so brilliant. And they really stand out in the market. So what do I mean by that? Well, Google's mechanism, both for the volume of clicks you get, how much you pay, it rewards good adverts. You might think to yourself, well, what the hell is a good advert? Another way of thinking about it is it actually penalizes bad adverts. So if I said an irrelevant ad, that would be a good example. You know, you want A and they're advertising B. That's a bad ad. Google is actually going to penalize advertisers that do that. It's going to make them pay more than somebody who's got a good ad. Now, why is Google different from any other advertising platform? Well, TV does not do this, radio does not do this, press, direct mail, cold calling. None of these things penalize the actual advertiser for doing bad ads. Now, their campaigns might not be very good. That's a penalty in a way, but it's not the advertising, it's not the publisher that will penalize them. So you're all familiar with the kind of attitude to cold calling. Everybody hates it because it's irrelevant, doesn't stop people cold calling. For them, it's just a volume game. Direct mail is exactly the same, you know? So it's not uncommon to see, you know, little stickers on people's letterboxes, no direct mail, please. You know, they hate it. But people keep sending it because it's cheap and it's just a volume game. So you just keep doing it. No penalty, no penalty, no penalty. But actually, TV, radio, and press are all the same. It's just more expensive, so you don't notice it as much. But if any of you are into like American sports and watch the Super Bowl, you might be familiar with this story. Now, it's not very long ago, Super Bowl. What was it, like a month ago, a month and a half? But actually, Kanye West bought an advert in the middle of the Super Bowl. And you guys may have missed this story, but the image is quite small. But he did it as a bit of a excuse my language, is a bit of a fuck you to people. And he advertised some quite interesting merchandise, including that T-shirt there, which has a somewhat controversial symbol on it. So, I mean, it's a sort of extreme example, but if you have money, you can run any advert you want on pretty much any medium. Doesn't matter how annoying it is. You cannot do that on Google in the same way. That's a good thing. And why is this? Well, Google wants its search results to be useful. So if you go to a library and they can never find the book you want, or they never have the book you want, you will stop going to that library. Google has always positioned that search results page as something that has utility. I can't find something, I'll go to Google. I can't find something, I'll go to Google. The better the results, the more likely you are to keep coming back. They can't afford to have irrelevant adverts on their page. So if your advert is irrelevant, you will be penalized. And the other way of thinking about it is, if I can make my ad super targeted and relevant, Google is going to reward me for that. And that's totally unusual. So yeah, bad results hurt their platform. So let's dispel myth number one. The highest bid gets to the top of the search results. Not true. Not true at all. So in order to explain this, and if any of this doesn't make sense, just sort of raise your hand and I'll stop. But it's worth looking at what I call like the anatomy of search results. So right at the very top is what the user types. Now, that's technically called a search query. It's not a keyword. So users ask questions, you buy keywords, and you hope that the keyword you've bought matches their query. That's what's really going on. So you have a query, and then you have an ad. So the ad will have a URL in it, or a brand name, or a company name. There'll be a title to the ad. So here it says local electrician. Is that Lawton? Not sure. There'll be some sort of description. There might be things called site links. So these are individual links that go to different parts of your website. So a user's asking a question, and it's going to look at the answers below. And all of those elements go to answer the question the user has asked. So do all of those elements signal to the user, this is what I wanted? That's what a search result is trying to do. And the stronger the match, the stronger the association, the more likely the user is to click on it. So this section was about how the highest bidder doesn't win. So I'm going to do a bit of a sort of a spoof example. So we've got the same search query, electrician in Loughton, right? Now let's imagine, I've made these up. Let's imagine Pimlico plumbers are going to do a big push into electrics. I mean, they're already doing it, right? So they decide to start advertising 9 a.m. on a Monday along with Aspect. And let's imagine that Pimlico bid £1 for a click and Aspect bid 50 pence, right? So technically at the start of the auction, the highest bidder will be at the top, but I'm going to explain what goes on. So if you're looking for an electrician in Lawton, which ad are you more likely to click on? The top ad doesn't mention electrician at all, doesn't mention the area at all. The brand name has got the word plumber in it. Is that a hand raise? Is that Mark? No, nothing. Okay. Whereas the bottom ad has got the location that you're looking for. It's got the service that you're looking for. So chances are that the bottom ad will probably get more clicks than the top ad. So let's play this out. So let's imagine the bottom ad gets 100 clicks and the top ad gets 20 clicks. So Google has earned 20 quid from the top ad, but it's actually earned 50 quid from the second place ad. Now, generally, if all the ads are good, the ad at the top will get more clicks than the ad at the bottom. That's just sort of the way it works. It's the first ad that customers see. Now, Google wants to make as much money as possible. So what Google is going to do is say, well, this ad has got it's got 5 times the click-through rate of the top ad. I'm going to demote the top ad, and I'm going to promote the bottom ad. So what happens is, over time, as Google learns about the performance of these ads, it will change the position. Now, Aspect are still going to pay 50 pence. In fact, they might even pay slightly less. But instead of getting 20 clicks in P2, let's imagine they get 150 clicks in P1. Now, they've earned 75 quid for Google. So instead of 50 quid and 20 quid, now the top position ad is earning 75 quid. So what Google wants to do is it wants to monetize that page in the most efficient way possible. And it's going to use click-through rate, how popular your ad is, to determine that. And it's going to promote the most popular ads. So it's not about how much you pay. It's about how much you bid and how popular your ad is put together. Now, all right, Andrew, yes, go ahead. What's your question?
Yeah, Martin, yeah, good morning. Sorry, forgive me, I might have missed something you said earlier. So this bottom one, how do they promote themselves? Is this something that that they are they actively, you know, putting this online? So or is it, you know, something that they've set up?
So this is, so Google AdWords, you pay for keywords, and if those keywords match what people search for,
oh, I see.
Your
right,
ad will appear. Yeah, so this is the this is the paid for platform. Yeah. So
good.
So long story short, if you write a really good ad, you can boost your position in the auction without paying more. So you're actively incentivized to write a good ad. Myth number 2, keywords you buy will determine whether or not your ad shows. You might think, hang on a minute, what on earth, what else would determine? Well, it's a myth, because actually there's a whole load of things going on that will determine whether or not your ad is showing. So Google lets you set budget caps per day. So you might say, I'm going to spend 20 quid on this keyword per day. Well, if there's enough clicks or enough impressions in a day to generate 100 quid's worth of clicks, then you're only going to get a fifth of the day. So you might find your ads only run in the morning and then they just stop. You can set geographic limits to where your keyword appears. You can decide what time of the day you want your ad to appear. The other thing is, you might not know this, but when you advertise on Google, they have a network. So you bid on a keyword, but that might trigger an ad on YouTube, or it might trigger an ad on Ask Jeeves. So all the results in Ask Jeeves are Google results, and that's what's called their partner network. So there's various settings within Google AdWords that you can configure as to where you want your ad to be directed. If you don't disable those, they default to everything. You can burn your budget on a load of irrelevant sites, and you go to Google search results, you can't find your ad. Well, it's because you spent all your budget somewhere else. They'll also look at the search history. So if a user's regularly doing stuff, that might bias your ad. But the 2 most important things that you need to think about are these last 2, which is match type and negative keywords. So again, if any of this is confusing, stop me. So a user types a search query, you buy a keyword, but you can put matching on that keyword. So I'll go on and explain what I mean. So let's look at this query here. So domestic ground solar, right? Now, what's interesting is we've got 3 ads here. The top ad from Northeast Solar Experts doesn't mention ground solar at all. Nor does the second one from Solar PV Systems, but the third one does. Complete guide to ground mounted solar panels. Good stuff. So why are the ads at the top showing when only the third ad is talking about ground mounted? It's because you can Go ahead.
I say highest bidder.
It's what?
They're the highest bidder.
No,
Mm.
no, no, not highest bidder. So it's because there's different ways of buying a keyword. So you could bid on domestic ground solar using something called exact match. So only when the user types exactly those words would your ad appear. Or you can bid on something called phrase match, which is if any of those words appear anywhere in the query that a user types in any order, I still want my ad to show. Or you could do something called broad match. And broad match is where you say to Google, you decide if you think what I'm offering matches the query. So you've got different levels of control here. Now, obviously, building out lots and lots of exact keywords can take a long time and it's harder to manage. It's much easier to just sling everything on broad match. You know, have a really simple keyword like solar. Just bid on solar and do broad match, but you will match for absolutely everything. You know, so that's the problem. So, you know, your performance in the auction isn't just what you bid, it isn't just your click-through rate, it's the match type that you use. So I think what's going on here maybe, and again, I can't see their account, so I don't know how they've configured it, but I think this bottom ad here might be bidding on exact match for domestic ground solar. Whereas the top two are probably doing either phrase or broad. So you could be doing domestic and solar as words, and if they appear anywhere, or you could be buying something like home PV, and Google has decided, well, domestic solar, that's good enough for a broad match, as far as I'm concerned. Now, obviously, you can't see other people's bidding strategies, so you've got to try and sort of deduce it sometimes. But the important thing to realize is there's a disconnect between what somebody's looking for and the ad on the top two. You know, they're not talking about ground solar at all. So are you going to click it? Probably not. So they're going to get a lower click-through rate. So over time, they're going to drop in the auction, or they're going to have to pay more and more and more to stay at the top. Whereas the eco experts, they're going to get a higher click-through rate. So they're going to go higher and higher for the same bid, or they can lower their bid to stay in the same position. But if we do another query, a bit of an obscure one. So you're an installer now, and you want domestic ground solar mounts. Now, maybe there's no such thing as domestic mounts. Maybe there's only industrial ones. I don't know. Now, Google knows that you're looking for a product here. It's figured it out. So the top of the sponsored results is actually these product images here, which is great. But if you scroll down the page, you'll still see sponsored ads. And now it gets really interesting. So the first sponsored ad is actually a system of ground mounts. Great. Unfortunately, the eco experts are still running their ad here. So maybe I was wrong about them bidding on exact match. So maybe what they're doing is phrase matching on ground and mount and solar. Now, so there's match types and there's negative keywords. They're two things that can control whether or not your ad shows. So what the eco experts should have done is they should have added a negative. So they should have added the plural mounts as a negative. You guys may be getting lost. I don't know. Yeah. But you can buy a phrase and then you can say, but don't show my ad if any of these words appear. You know, so it could be, I don't know, like, I don't know, replacing a consumer unit, right? You might buy that keyword, but you would add as a negative the word yourself, right? You don't want your ad to appear when somebody types replacing a consumer unit yourself, right? So this is a way to think about this stuff. And now this situation is really, really important in terms of a successful or an unsuccessful AdWords campaign, because it really illustrates some of the places that you can fall over. So in this example, this is the worst scenario, which is basically you've got a completely irrelevant ad for a product you don't even sell, right? If your click-through rate will be low, so you'll pay more for the click, but you don't want the clicks anyway because you don't sell the product. You're paying to advertise a product you don't sell. That's bad. Or it could simply be, you do have the product, but you've got the wrong copy. So if you're not referencing what the user is searching for, you're going to harm your click-through rate, which is going to inflate your cost per click. But then the other side to it is, remember when I did the anatomy of search results, these search results direct you to somewhere. They direct you to somewhere in the website. So if you're matching in the wrong way, then chances are you're going to be sending the user to the wrong landing page. You're sending the user to the wrong part of your site. You're not in control of why your ad is showing. So you're not going to be in control of where you send the user. And, if you want a low cost per lead, you've got to buy the right keyword with the right ad copy, and you've got to put it to the right place on your website. Jordan recently changed the part of his website and developed an EV landing page. It's got all the information you would want about an EV charger. When Jordan directs people into that EV charging page, the lead capture on it is like 5 times what you get if you just dump people on the homepage. So thinking about the right keywords to buy, getting the right match types, the right ad copy, and putting people on the right place on your website, that is what's going to determine whether or not your AdWords campaign is successful. It's way more than just, am I buying the right keywords? So how do you go about fixing this? Well, to be continued. So your brains may already be exploding at this point. But what I'm going to do is in part 2, I'll get into how you should organize your website, how you should start to think about intent of users and groups of keywords, and how you go about managing bids. So I wanted this to be sort of baby steps in the first phase, but I'm sure you guys have got loads of questions, so ask away.